Hey, freshmen. So this is going to be a experience, I guess. I'm here, but I'm not. So I'm going to do my best to record this, and hopefully it will make sense. I will be putting my glasses off and on because I can't read the screen in front of me. But anyway, so welcome to Geography. It's Friday. I think Mr. Selby is my sub, so he's watching along with you. We are going to do Russia Part 2. But if you have not taken your reading quiz yet, that is the first thing that you guys should do. So hit pause on the screen or on the computer if you haven't taken the reading quiz yet. You should have read Chapter 16, Section 2, which is the history and culture of Russia, and then take a reading quiz over that. So when you're finished with the reading quiz, then you can jump back into the video and listen or begin listening to the lecture and following along on the PowerPoint that I uploaded to your Google Classroom. You should be able to pull the Google Classroom PowerPoint slide up. Sometimes when I send a PowerPoint to Google Classroom and it converts it to Google Slides, it kind of messes the slides up. So if something looks wonky, I'm sorry. I probably won't have much time to go back in and look at that and see if it looks correct, but hopefully it's okay. If it's not okay, you can probably figure it out. So you should have your Google Chromebooks, or your Chromebooks up and open. You can find the PowerPoint that I'm going to be discussing in my lecture today. Open that up on your Chromebook, and then I do expect you to do your regular fact of the day. So have your notebook in front of you as well. We're going to start with the fact of the day, and then we're going to do a little bit of review, and then we are going to take some notes. Now, while you'll have the notes in the PowerPoint, I still want you to write them down in your notebook. I don't want there to be any confusion about that. So it will be available for you to see. It's pretty kind of boring information today as far as the notes go because it's, again, physical geography, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but this won't be a super long lesson today. So if you've got your Chromebooks open and you've got that PowerPoint ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and do our fact of the day today. So you will notice in your PowerPoint there is a slide that reminds you to take the quiz. The next slide, again, is a duplicate from the other day. It says Russia, the largest country in the world, and then it has a dashing picture of our friend Peter the Great. So we're going to actually talk about another great, Catherine the Great. She would be, I have to think about this. I believe she was married to Peter's grandson. So I'm going to read from my sheet here in just a second. But she served as Tsarina, or also Empress, of Russia a few decades after Peter the Great was gone. So she's actually quite a scandalous lady. She has quite the sordid history and past. And I suppose historians bring that out or talk about that because she's a lady, she's a girl, and sometimes that naughty behavior is fairly typical of male emperors and Caesars and czars over the course of history. Seems to kind of come with the territory, but Catherine the Great was fairly scandalous herself. She reminds me a little bit of Queen Elizabeth, and I think we've talked about her. Maybe I'm thinking of history class, but anyway, we're going to talk about Catherine the Great. There is a picture of her on the slide that says Fact of the Day, Catherine the Great, Empress of Russia from 1762 till 1796. So if you're doing your facts of the day, make sure that you write today's date, that you write the title of the fact of the day, and make sure that you write your facts in complete sentences. Like I always say, numbering them is helpful for me, and if you would capitalize and punctuate and all of those wonderful English things, I would greatly appreciate it. So for full credit, that is. So okay, so I'm gonna put my glasses on because I'm gonna have to read from this, and it's a little dusty or foggy for me. So let's see here. I'm going to jump into my other Here we go. Nope, that's not it. Okay. All right. So, fun fact about Catherine the Great. She actually was not Russian, although she served as a Tsarina or the Empress of Russia. She technically was not Russian. It says the woman whom history would remember as Catherine the Great, Russia's longest ruling female leader, was actually the oldest daughter of an impoverished Prussian prince. Technically, she probably was German. She was born in 1729. Her married name was Sophie, and she enjoyed numerous marital prospects because of her bloodline, because she was technically a princess. And so the various princes of Europe tried to marry off, or their parents tried to marry them off to people with title and nobility. So a lot of them were fairly closely related. She was not related to Peter the Great's family, however. So in 1744, when she was 15 years old, she was invited to Russia by the current Tsarina Elizabeth, who was a daughter of Peter the Great. Remember, Peter the Great had his son assassinated. She had assumed the throne in Russia 3 years earlier through a coup, but she was not married. She had no children, and so she needed to make sure that her nephew, let's see here, her nephew Peter, who was now the heir to the throne, had a suitable bride. So she invited Sophie and Sophie's mother from Prussia to Russia for a party of sorts, to meet her, to see how she intermingled with the royalty. And Elizabeth, the current Tsarina of Russia, was quite taken by her. And so she decided to fix her nephew up with Sophie, and they were married. Let's see here. The marriage took place in 1745. So Sophie became Catherine, also Ekaterina is how they would say it in Russian, but she officially changed her name. She converted to Christianity. She probably converted to Orthodox Christianity from maybe even Protestantism, or the German official German church. And they changed her name to Catherine. And so I'm going to have to plug my phone in because it is dying. Oh boy. I'm going to press on and see if I can get through this. My phone said low battery, so I may be hurting here. Anyway, so her marriage to Peter was a little bit scandalous. Peter was a unlovely man to be around. She was not in love with him. He was probably not in love with her. Despite their efforts, they remained childless for almost a decade of their marriage, which was highly unlikely or unusual, especially for the young people that they were. Catherine was carrying on romantically. As she became older, she became romantically and physically involved with other men in the court. And according to this information, let me actually read this to you. Desperately unhappy in their married lives, Peter and Catherine both began extramarital affairs. She with a man by the name of Sergei, a Russian military officer. When she finally gave birth to a son about 10 years into their marriage, the gossip in the court was that her firstborn son, Paul, was probably not Peter's son. It was probably this other gentleman, Sergei. It also says that the empress at the time, again, Elizabeth, which was Peter's aunt, Elizabeth actually encouraged and permitted this extramarital relationship, one, to get an heir to the throne for Peter, and also simply to, unfortunately, make Catherine happy, which I don't know if it made Catherine happy, but it was the beginning of a very long life of extramarital affairs and seeking happiness essentially in the arms of a whole bunch of men. And so sadly. So eventually Elizabeth the Tsarina passed away, and that made Peter the Tsar of Russia. And it says, when Elizabeth died in January of 1762, her nephew succeeded her to the throne as Peter III. Catherine became what is known as a consort. So she's not really a queen, but she is married to the king or the czar. Eager to put his own stamp on the nation, he quickly ended Russia's war with Prussia, an act that proved deeply unpopular. These unhappy factions turned to Catherine, who also feared Peter's intentions. As tensions mounted, a plan to overthrow Peter took root, and when the conspiracy was uncovered, Catherine moved quickly. She gained the support of the country's most powerful military regiment, and they arranged for her husband's arrest. And so just after becoming czar for 6 months, Peter abdicated the throne to Catherine. Catherine became the sole ruler of the country. She became an empress or czar. And shortly thereafter, her husband, Peter, was mysteriously murdered, supposedly by some military that supported Catherine. So she says she didn't put them up to it, but that was like a gray cloud over her entire reign. Most people suspected that to avoid any controversy about her ruling as the empress, she probably had him taken out. So he's off the scene. A few more random things about Catherine. It says she had many attempts to overthrow her during the course of her reign, but she became more and more powerful. She continued to carry on with men and had many lovers, and ultimately, when she would tire of somebody, she would give them a title and a bunch of land. And so it is said that all the people that Catherine loved her because she took care of them when she was finished with them, so to speak. Sorry for the crass talk here, but this is real history. Catherine saw herself as an enlightened ruler. She lived during an era of enlightenment. America had declared independence during her reign. The Enlightenment was moving across all of Europe. She pushed to encourage reform in education in Russia. She increased the size of her empire. She even flirted with colonizing parts of North America and Alaska. And then, let's see here. It says she was champion of the arts, keeping a lifelong correspondence with authors such as Voltaire. She also had one of the most impressive art collections in the world in her St. Petersburg Winter Palace, which is now a museum. There's some pictures of that on the slide, PowerPoint slide. And then after she died, there are all kinds of crazy rumors about how she died, that it was, she died a violent death, or she died while using the restroom, just all kinds of crazy things. But they say she probably just died in her sleep. Her oldest son, Paul, who she had been alienated from, the boy who we think was probably fathered by Sergia, ended up becoming the heir to the throne, although she didn't want that because of their relationship. But he ended up becoming emperor, but he was a spoiled brat, and he did a terrible job as czar, and he was assassinated just a few years into his reign. So while she's called Catherine the Great in large part because of the way she succeeded to the throne, the fact that she was not truly Russian, but embraced the Russian people, Russian nation, that she served longer than any other female ruler of Russia, and that she fought off her enemies, she enlarged the size of Russia, she earned the title Catherine the Great. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. So you hopefully got enough facts in that. All right, so I am going to look at my PowerPoint slide again. There are several pictures of her here as a young lady. There's a picture of her and Peter with their son Paul. Again, the little dude, he's got a hat on and he's holding a dog. He is the one who probably was not Peter's son. And then there's a picture of her as an older woman. She was always a pretty lady, sort of in a Russian Catherine the Great kind of way. And then there are a few pictures of her incredible palace. Another reason that I want to go to St. Petersburg someday. So, wow. So take a look at those pictures. There's actually a picture of her coronation gown in the museum or the home, the Winter Palace that she called home in St. Petersburg. Then there's a couple of slides that just have a little bit of repeat from our class on, for you guys, it would be our class on Wednesday. Moscow is the capital city, Trans-Siberian Railroad, Siberia, tundra, taiga, the vast forest of evergreens. And then I realized as we were wrapping things up on Wednesday that I did not give you the definition of steppe or steppe, depending on how you want to pronounce it. If you want to copy that definition down, the steppe is a flat grassland, and large parts of the middle part of Russia are called the breadbasket of Russia because they grow wheat and grain so prolifically there. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, and then there are a couple of slides that essentially regurgitate, I'll just use that word, regurgitate chapter 16, section 1, the physical features of Russia. And so I'm going to zip through them fairly quickly. I do want you to copy them down so you can write to your heart's delight while I'm going through these, okay? I'm zipping through this because my battery power on my phone is low and the phone is about to turn off. So half of Russia is on the continent of Europe. The other half is in Asia. The Ural Mountains divide Europe and Asia. Moscow is the capital city and the largest city in Europe with 14 million people. Average temperature during the summertime is 60 degrees and at winter 20 degrees. Most of Russia is cold all of the time. The Volga, V-O-L-G-A river is the longest river in Europe, and it empties into the Caspian Sea. It is another one of those rivers that you will be drawing on your next map, just like the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. The Caspian Sea, which is part of the southern part of Russia, is the world's largest inland sea. It is cut off from any other oceans or seas. It is 270 miles by 640 miles wide or long. It is actually a saltwater sea. It has no outlet to any outside, like Mediterranean Sea, any of those seas. Let's see, a large part of Russia lies in the Arctic Circle, which we talked about on Wednesday, and the northern coast of Russia is tundra, which means the subsoil is frozen, and Emmanuel is going to plant a Christmas tree there, and no, Nathan is going to plant a Christmas tree there and say that Jesus came back, say that the rapture has happened, or that that's a sign. Let's see here. The northeastern part of Russia, which we haven't looked at yet, is part of the Ring of Fire. Asian Russia, which is Siberia, is sparsely populated with vast natural resources such as aluminum, zinc, iron ore, copper, silver, diamonds, petroleum, coal, natural gas, and gold. I think one of you mentioned that in class. The communists mismanaged horribly the natural resources of Russia. I don't know that this more modern government has done much better job. They are selling oil. Europe is fairly dependent on Russia for their oil. So they are profiting from it. I would say that there is a growing middle class, especially since the days of communism, but they could be doing better. There is a PowerPoint picture of a map that shows you where Moscow is, the Caucasus Mountains, Lake Baikal. And then the next slide is confusing because the land is dark and the water is white. But I wanted you to see the, I'm going to misspell it, the Kamchatka Peninsula, and I want you to take a look at that. There are a couple of slides that show it in detail, and it shows part of the Ring of Fire where the tectonic plates are and where you see a lot of the volcanic activity. There's a larger map so you can see how it connects down with the Japanese islands. And then there are several beautiful pictures of that peninsula, and I mentioned to you guys on Wednesday that if you are into fishing or hunting or enjoy volcanic activity, it is an incredible place to visit. I would love to say that it's on my bucket list, but honestly it kind of scares me. There is a drone video that I want you to watch. It's about 5 minutes long, and I will include the link in the PowerPoint so you can click on it. Actually, I'll probably put it in your Google Classroom instructions. So click on that, watch that video. It is the things that they're doing in the middle of volcanic activity on volcanoes is absolutely terrifying to me. I would be afraid that yeah. So anyway, the very last slide, well, actually, the next to last slide has a picture of the peninsula, or a beautiful scene of lush green grasslands and mountains and clouds in the background. There's a film strip on top of it, and that's just cue to you to go watch the drone image of Kamchatka Peninsula. I'm going to see if I can find I don't see a pronunciation of it here. But anyway, Kamchatka Peninsula. I would like for you to watch the drone video of that. So put on your, actually, yeah, I don't think there's just music, so you don't really even need your earbuds. So if you just want to play it with the music down low, just watch it from your individual screens. And then I think that's it. I don't have any more information. This is a fairly short class today, so in total, maybe a 45-minute class. And so Mr. Selby, you'll have a little bit of extra time if you want to quiz them about anything. They're pretty smart kids, small group, but smart kids. So there's no homework over the weekend. Next week I will have you guys register to vote for the mock election. I think that's it. So have a great weekend. Miss you guys, but it's nice to go down to Ouachita and see Cheney sing. So anyway, see you guys.